Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to cover today, so we really should begin immediately our fourth session. So, for the session 4, I request Dr. Rukhsana Siddiqui, Chair of our session 4, former Professor, Department of International Relations, Quaid-i-Azam University, Islamabad. Please come and join us on stage. I request co-chair Dr. Kushum Shakya, Head of Central Department of Economics, Tribhuvan University, Nepal. Please come on stage. Now I request Dr. Kaiser, Bengali, Economist, former consultant for economic affairs and head of the Chief Minister's Policy Reforms Unit, Government of Balochistan, and advisor to the Chief Minister of Sindh for Planning and Development. Please come on stage, Dr. Kaiser, Bengali. Now I request Dr. Ijaz Nabi, Adjunct Faculty, Department of Economics, Lahore University of Management Sciences, Lahore. Please come on stage, Dr. Ijaz Nabi. Now I request Dr. Nausheen, Wasi, Assistant Professor, Department of International Relations, University of Karachi. So please join us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to take a moment to introduce our chair of the session, chair and co-chair of the session, Dr. Rukhsana Siddiqui, teaches as visiting faculty after retiring from Quaid-i-Azam University, Islamabad, where she was tenured professor for 30 years. She holds a PhD degree in International Relations from the University of Pennsylvania, a master's degree in Political Science from DU University, and MS in International Relations from Quaid-i-Azam University. She was Fulbright Senior Scholar in Residence in 1993-94 at the Macmillan Center for International and Area Studies at Yale University, and had an ongoing appointment at Yale as Summer Research Associate for 12 years. She taught at Blinkit University, Ankara, Turkey in 1999-91, and was Brett Fellow at the University of the Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, South Africa, from 1999 to 2000. She also held a summer visiting faculty position at the University of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, from 1987 to 1989. She is the author of 3 books on sub-Saharan African political economy. She is a member of the advisory board of Gazelle International, a Yale-affiliated NGO from international education, and one of the founding members of the Sabancı University in Istanbul. Our co-chair, Dr. Kushum Shakya, is an academician by profession with more than 30 years experience in teaching, is currently head of the Central Department of Economics at Tribhuvan University, Nepal. She obtained a PhD in economics from Tribhuvan University and taught an Australian Award Scholarship, completed a Master's of Demography from Australian National University. In 2008, she served as Director of Quality Assurance at the University Grants Commission in Nepal. She has been part of the Association of Nepalese Alumni from Australia and served as a vice chair in the past. She also received the Alumni Excellence Award both in 2012 and 2016 with the diverse research projects. Over to you, Dr. Rukhsana, and co-chair Dr. Kushum Shakya. Over to you.
We have on this panel 3 very eminent social scientists. One has already been introduced. She's visiting from Nepal. We have amidst us Dr. Kaiser, Bengali, whom I've been following for many years and reading his articles and listening to him on TV and paying very serious attention to what he says, because it carries a lot of weight. Kaiser Bengali Sahab has 40 years in teaching, research and policy advice, has been a policy advisor at the University of Karachi, STPI, SABIST and SPDC. He has worked extensively with international organizations in Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Eritrea and Kenya. He was the first head of the Benazir Income Support Program and he represents Balochistan on the 10th NFC, and his whole bio sketch is in the booklet if you want to read further. We also have Dr. Ijaz Nabi Saab amongst us. He is an executive director of CDPR, Consortium for Development Policy Research, and country director, Pakistan, of International Growth Center, hosted jointly by the London School of Economics and Oxford University. He was previously Dean of Faculty of Social Sciences at LUMS. He had served at the World Bank for over 2 decades in Washington, D.C., and worked on Mexico, Korea, Thailand, Malaysia, Laos, and Myanmar. He has published extensively on economic growth, investment, and finance, and international trade and labor markets in developing countries. Just a little note before we proceed. The chief issues being faced by Pakistan economy are normally mentioned as spiraling inflation, massive devaluation of Pak rupee, increasing fuel prices, and drying up of foreign currency reserves. However, these are just byproducts of the maladies that ail Pakistan. What lies beneath the systemic rot, I think, are the factors that need urgent attention: population explosion, illiteracy, gender equity, climate change, massive corruption, and corruption in higher and lower secondary education is rampant now, and many more. The list goes on. William Easterly once said that Pakistan is being robbed dry by its stationary and banded elite. And this he said many, many years ago. Dr. Ijaz Nabi Saab is from the World Bank, used to be, and Easterly must have been there when he was there. Anyway, if these issues are not addressed urgently, I'm afraid we will become in reality what the governor of the State Bank of India once said on BBC about us, and risking the annoyance of my audience right now, I will just say it. He said, Pakistan is the Jurassic Park of South Asia. Trust me, I saw it myself. I was aghast when I heard that. And I hope that never happens to be. So since we have amongst us such eminent social scientists and economists, I give the floor to Dr. Kaiser Bengali Saab.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, PIIA, Dr. Masuma, and the staff for inviting me here to this very august conference with the audience here is really elite. I'm talking about largely CPEC and Gwadar. Everybody seems to claim credit for who started CPEC. The fact is that CPEC started in 2006 when General Musharraf was in power and Chinese President Hu Jintao visited Pakistan. That's when the ball was set rolling. So I think that's important to put that in context as to when it started and what were the initial agreements that were made. Gwadar has great potential. It's been termed as a game changer, possible game changer. It can be, certainly. If you look at this map, this is where, does this work? No, it doesn't work. The green is Pakistan, and I guess you know where Gwadar is. All these countries to the west and north is Gwadar's hinterland. This is the territory that Gwadar can cover in terms of trade connectivity. So this offers a huge, my paper that is there provides all the numbers for what is the total territory and what is the total population that this area covers. And my numbers don't cover Russia, although this hinterland can extend to parts of Russia. The other important thing in terms of positive outcome of Gwadar and CPEC is that it can actually break down all the Berlin walls that exist in South Asia. The distance between Gwadar and Kashgar is 2,000 kilometers. What I am presenting in this map is only part of that, from the up to Hassan Abdal. Of course, the highway goes down from Hassan Abdal right up to Gwadar. But Hassan Abdal to the Indian border, Wagah, is about 300 kilometers. And the distance from Hassan Abdal to Jalalabad is another 150 to 200 kilometers. Now imagine Chinese trucks coming down and up the 2,000 kilometer Gwadar-Kashgar highway and passing Hassan Abdal, and they know that the Indian border is only 300 kilometers away. They will want to use that route because India-China trade today is 100 million plus compared to Pakistan's 14 million. So China certainly has far greater interest in trading with India, political differences apart, and they would want to use that. And if Pakistan gives that permission to Chinese trucks to head east from Hassan Abdal towards Amritsar, then over time Indian trucks will also want to heading towards China to cross that road. And once Indian trucks begin plying Amritsar to Hassan Abdal, I think the demand for them to go further east to Jalalabad would also open up. So in that sense, CPEC holds the potential to bring down the Berlin walls that we have created all around us. This is very hypothetical at the moment, but it is not something that we cannot visualize. Now, if CPEC is to be a game changer, it has to benefit Pakistan. In this context, what is important is what route the highway will take. Three routes are in competition with each other. There is the central route, eastern route, and western route. Number two is the eastern route. Number one is the central route. And number three is the western route. The western route passes through almost exclusively Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. This is the relatively underdeveloped part of the country. And this is where all the insurgencies are boiling. So if this route passes through the western route, then the economic opportunities that it creates in this area will help to develop this very underdeveloped part of the country and perhaps help to simmer down the insurgencies. Insurgencies don't occur because people are just willing, get up in the morning and itching to fight. They have grievances, and these grievances are rooted in socio-political, socio-economic factors. And once we have economic activity taking place, we can expect political tensions to come down as well within this area. But unfortunately, the route that is being prioritized is Route 2. That's where, if you look at the federal PSDP, the allocations for the highway is for Route 2, which actually only part of it passes through Balochistan and almost entirely bypasses Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Fatah. So it's a decision we have to make and attempt. This dispute boiled up in 2015, and the government called an all-party conference on the 28th of May 2015. And it was decided in that all-party conference that the western route will be built as the Gwadar-Kashgar route, but the kind of investments that are coming forth don't seem to tell us that that decision is being followed up. But it is essential. But how and who in this CPEC will benefit, which part of the country will benefit is very much dependent on the route the Gwadar-Kashgar highway takes. Before I go on that, let me also come to the negatives. And there can be many negatives. And a game changer can turn into game over. I don't have it on my screen, but there are 12 questions that I floated in 2014 when I was still working with the Chief Minister's office in Quetta. The first two questions relates to feasibility. Has an overall CPEC feasibility been developed? No answer has been forthcoming. And I don't need an answer personally. I think the answer, the people of Pakistan, the public needs an answer. Parliament needs an answer. That has not been forthcoming. And I know from the deliberations that went on in the Planning Commission that they were also scrambling for this feasibility and they couldn't find it. So I am assuming that it doesn't exist. No feasibility has been prepared. Overall feasibility, economic, political, military, because this kind of change has multiple impacts. And I am led to conclude that this feasibility doesn't exist. The other is the environmental feasibility. Because an overall feasibility has not been developed and economic feasibility has not been developed, we don't know how many trucks will pass through this highway. There are estimates from 1,000 to 6,000 a day. Everybody comes with their own number. But whatever happens, when these trucks, even 1,000 trucks a day passing through the towns through which this route will take, what carbon monoxide levels we will have and what will be the impact on the health of the people where these trucks will be passing through. Then there are what balance of payments impact it will have. Almost all the investments in CPEC are either loans or FDI on very unfavorable terms. I have some inside information on being in government, both in Sindh government and in Balochistan government, how these agreements are made and how lopsided they are. What if the inflow of foreign exchange from Gwadar, from the CPEC route, is less than the outflow of foreign exchange? Has any estimate been made as to what the numbers will be? Similarly, for fiscal balance, are we supposed to foot the entire bill for security of CPEC? What if the revenues from Gwadar are less than that expenditure? And the next question, of course, is what is Pakistan's share in Gwadar port revenue? I discovered that it was 9%, with 91% going to China. And the Minister for Shipping had to admit in the floor of the National Assembly that yes, that is correct. Our share is only 9%. So what if we are spending more on Gwadar and CPEC than what we are receiving in either domestic terms or foreign exchange terms? We don't know, and we should know. That feasibility has to be out in public. Otherwise, it's a lost shop. We should close shop. If we are spending more on Gwadar and CPEC than we are receiving in terms of its income or revenue. Then there are certain matters certain issues that matter to the provinces. Is the Gwadar-Kashgar highway going to be a toll road? Assuming it does, how is the sharing going to be between the provinces through which this highway passes? Will there be any share for Balochistan or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or Gilgit-Baltistan? A large number of units have been raised within the armed forces to provide security for CPEC. Are the districts through which this highway is passing, will recruitment take place from those districts or not? If not, then this security force for security will be seen as an occupation force, and it is currently being seen as an occupation force. Gwadar has no water. All these billboards that come up showing Gwadar looking like Dubai or New York is a fraud. Gwadar has no water. It cannot ever become a large city. It cannot ever become an industrial center. You can desalinate water, but desalination is very costly. At that cost, Gwadar will never be economically feasible. There is a way out, and the way out is that if you're, and who will foot the bill for desalination? Is that again going to come out of the government's budget? What about the budget deficit? How will that be managed? What we can do, and this was one of the suggestions that were presented when I was in Quetta government, that you have 1% additional of Gwadar revenues dedicated to providing water to Gwadar. But these are policy matters that need to be taken up, and I don't see, and I can tell you that they are not being discussed anywhere at any level of government. The final issue that concerns Balochistan is that will Gwadar become a Baloch minority city? Will it become what Karachi has become? And there has to be measures to ensure that Gwadar does not become a Baloch minority city, otherwise we will never have peace. As long as we don't have peace, there can be no development. The Chinese have pulled out all their people from Afghanistan after the recent bomb attack, and if the attacks on the Chinese continue and the attack on foreign personnel continue, there will be no investment, let alone Balochistan, there will be no investment in Pakistan, everybody will run away. But I want to end on an optimistic note. I don't know if this is very clear, it's kind of black and white. So कुछ भी काम नहीं करता. क्या इसका पॉइंटर किधर है? I need a pointer. ये पीसी का है क्या? Is this belong to PC or? Okay. This is the border between Balochistan and Afghanistan. Here. This is Chauraha, and this is Helmand. One possibility, now Gwadar cannot be economically feasible as an alternative to Karachi, because our basic population centers and our commercial and industrial centers are Sindh and Balochistan, Sindh and Punjab. In 2008, government decided to offload 4 ships carrying wheat in Gwadar, diverted them from Karachi to Gwadar simply because they wanted to show Gwadar functions. And from Gwadar, it was brought by road to Karachi. 2 billion rupees were spent extra on bringing that wheat to Karachi. So Gwadar is not economically feasible in this context. It cannot just be an alternative port for Pakistan. But Gwadar can be made economically feasible by dedicating the port for all of Afghan transit trade. Afghan transit trade has been detrimental to Pakistan so far, in the sense that either goods that go to Afghanistan come back to Pakistan, or they're offloaded in Pakistan before going to Afghanistan. Only the papers reach Afghanistan, the goods are all offloaded here. It has been very detrimental to our industry, which has to operate in a tax-paid zone and compete with tax-free products that are smuggled back from Afghanistan. If you talk to the Chamber of Commerce people, they've been complaining for years of what Afghan transit trade affecting their industry. If we dedicated all Afghan transit trade to Gwadar and build a railway connecting Gwadar with Helmand, this is the route the railway can take. This is Lashkargah. And there are other towns as well, Lashkargah, Sangin. This is a matter of more precise studies as to where this railway will end up. But two advantages. One is that it will be very costly to smuggle Afghan goods into the Pakistani market. And two, it will develop southern Afghanistan, which of course we want to develop if peace has to come to Afghanistan. So I think this is something that I'm just throwing as a proposal. I've done it before also. But connecting Gwadar with Helmand via Chaki and transferring all Afghan transit trade to Gwadar I can foresee it is beneficial to Pakistan as well as to Afghanistan. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Ijaz Nabi.
Thank you.
So time is just 15 minutes, so please manage yourself.
I'm sorry?
Okay. Time is just 15 minutes.
No, I will be very parsimonious as far as time is concerned, because Kaiser is such a thorough analyst. He does such a great job that after he has spoken, I think we should just open it up for discussion. However, I'm slotted in to say a few things, so I will. First of all, let me thank Dr. Masuma for giving me this opportunity to interact this eminent group of people that economists normally don't interact with. Because, we talk different language. Our vocabulary is different, our concepts are different, our ways of expressing issues are different. So there's often very little commonality. So I was wondering how I could get out of having committed myself to Dr. Masuma. But then, listening to the discussion yesterday and most of today, I'm encouraged because I think there is a convergence. And I think Pakistan's dire economic straits has brought about that convergence. I think, if when economists talk to businessmen, they say, you guys are floating up there, you don't know the ground realities, you're up here. And when economists talk to people who deal with national security, we think you are up in upper space. Not at all anchored in the economic reality of the country. So what I thought I'd do, given that now we have a shared concern that the economic reality of the country is not so good, until we fix it, all of our national security paradigms are just hanging in the air. So let me try and give some context to that. But one thing I'll completely agree with Kaiser on is that, we did some studies on CPEC and what Pakistan needs to do to take advantage of CPEC. And we were shocked at how poorly prepared we were at all levels of the government. We just looked at what would Pakistan need to do to benefit from the industrial dimension of CPEC. And it turned out that we'd done very little. Same thing on agriculture, because I think China looks at Pakistan, China looks at the future growth of China, future income growth of China. The Chinese have done well through huge sacrifices over the last 40, 50 years. And that sacrifice has been by reducing own consumption, having very high savings, maintaining a highly undervalued exchange rate so that it became cheap for the world to buy from China and made it very expensive for the Chinese to buy from outside. So this was a deliberate strategy to save, to invest and grow. So Chinese have a very clear idea that future growth is going to result in a lot of demand and demand for consumption, consumables, and they see Pakistan as a potential, especially in agriculture area. But we discovered again to our dismay that very little homework had been done on the Pakistan side on how we would respond to that challenge. But let me just first give you a few pictures to show you why your concerns about the economic plight of Pakistan are absolutely bang on and how we are beginning to converge. And there's the best way to look at plight, to how well we are doing, is to make some comparisons. So I'm just going to, there was a time when we'd compare ourselves with Turkey, with Korea, etc. But I think it's safer to make comparison within South Asia. And so let me proceed. And the story there is not very happy. This is my structure of my talk. We can put that aside and move on. I just want to start off with this graph. And this graph actually encapsulates something that we all know, which is that till the late 1990s, Pakistan's GDP growth was consistently higher than India's. We had an average GDP growth rate of 6% in India, except in the COVID years. You combine this with this graph. This is population growth rates. Our population growth rate is twice as high as India and Bangladesh's. You combine the two, and you get this, which is that right up to 2000, our income per capita was a third richer. I remember my older siblings going to India and coming back and saying, we are much better off than them. In 2021, India's is a third higher. And if I were to project this trend, it would look very bad. Okay. Now, this is a scary figure, especially for gentlemen who are in the business of national security. Let me tell you in easy words what this represents. It simply shows what 1% of GDP can buy in dollar terms in Pakistan and India. Okay? So 1% of GDP, let's say that 1% is defense expenditure. At the end of the day, national security translates into what you can buy in terms of equipment. So 1% of GDP in 2006, just compare. There is a difference. In 2020, look at the difference. And in 2030, 1% of GDP of Pakistan will buy these many dollars or these many guns, and 1% of Indian GDP will buy this. I think we should underpin our national security debates keeping these pictures in mind. Because what I'm going to say is that this has to be turned around. If we think that we are in for the long haul in terms of our struggle with India because they believe that we need to pay a debt for the 800 years of Central Asians who ruled them. Most of us are not Central Asians. I am not Central Asian. All sides of my family for generations and generations were local people. And I think at some stage they converted to get out of the caste system. So to hold 220 million Pakistanis responsible for 800 years of whatever Central Asian rulers may have done, if that's what they believe in, then we are in it for the long haul with India. And if we are in it for the long haul, this is suicide. This is suicide. Which is why I think there is no national security paradigm without it being firmly embedded in the economy paradigm. Economic security has to be the first, the fundamental security we have to worry about. Let me proceed because this has certain implications, and I will merge with Kaiser shortly. Okay, what needs to be fixed? Why are we in these dire straits? This is consumption as a share of GDP in Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. 95% of what we produce, we consume. Only 5% goes into savings and investment. It's 72% in India and 71% in Bangladesh. Consumption. We are a highly consumption-oriented society. When, for a while, I was advisor to the Chief Minister of Punjab, the current Prime Minister. And I had an eminent industrialist sitting next to me in one of the meetings, Mr. Mancha. And Mr. Mancha was about to start building his shopping mall in Lahore. And I said, Mancha Saab, tusi te saddi aakhri hope so. You were our last hope for manufacturing. Why are you going into shopping malls? He said, Ijaz, you give me this policy framework, I'd be crazy not to build a shopping mall. So, the counterpart to the consumption story is the investment story. Low investment in Pakistan. Pakistan is green and is below India and Bangladesh. Okay, so what this has done, I'm just giving you the highlights. There's a lot of other numbers behind this, but just giving you highlights so that we can keep talking to each other. What has happened, you see, all of this transition, remember till the 90s we were okay. It's only starting the late 80s and 90s that the picture changes. What other big story was unfolding in Pakistan at that time? Engagement. Okay? That was the other big story happening in Pakistan. And the counterpart of that Afghan engagement in terms of numbers that economists measure is that we started to get huge inflows of concessionary capital from bilaterals and multilaterals. Ziaul Haq Saab, when he became the president of the country, he had a very tough time in his first 3 years. 2 years. He had a very tough time. He did enormous amount of reforms. I thought we were heading in the right direction. And then 9/11 happened. Over Chappar khul gayi. Enormous amount of money came into the country. We didn't have on how to use that money. A lot of that money went into changing the economic structure of the country, and I'll just come to that, what that structure was. Simultaneously, there was another very large flow of funds coming into this country, and that was remittances. Remittances started in the late 80s, and then they started to peak. The nature of remittances in all countries is that when you have trouble at home, this is because these are people who have gone out to work from relatively low income households. So when things are not so good in the country, they send a lot of money back. You're from Nepal. We did a deep study of poverty in Nepal at one point, and we were surprised that the least developed region of Nepal was doing the best in terms of poverty reduction. And that's because remittances were coming in a big way to support families at a time when Nepal's not doing very well. So the same thing was happening in Pakistan. We were turning into a security state. The state apparatus was focused on how to deal with the fallout of the Afghan war. And the money that was coming in, concessionary capital on the one hand and remittances on the other, was changing the structure of the economy. What was that structure? Real estate and shopping malls. Yeah, I asked a friend of mine from Peshawar. He returned to Pakistan after many years of serving in a university in the Far East. I said, why don't you do a good economic report on KP? And he said, well, what's there to write about? It's all gone. All the industry is gone. Remember that road? Remember the factories there? Gone. There's nothing happening in Peshawar. I said, hang on. Can you drive without congestion in Peshawar? He said, no, you can't move. I said, are there more shops? He said, gazillions of shops. There are all kinds of shopping malls. I said, do you have a plot of land in Peshawar? He said, yes, it's gone through the roof. That was happening to the economy. 40% annual rate of return in the real estate sector. Why would you set up a factory? Why would you set up a factory? So that's the structure of the economy, that these big flows that were coming into the country and our inability to manage them well at the federal level. So this structure has an important consequence. Whenever we have growth, and this is why we keep going back to the fund over and over and over again, there are all the neoliberal economics problems that Ashfaq Hassan talked about. They're all there, but let's first focus on what we do to get there. The moment there is growth in Pakistan, it happens after every completion of the IMF program. We stabilize and we get some growth going. When we get that growth, because we are highly consumption oriented, that translates into huge increase in consumption, which means huge increase in imports. And since we don't export much, our factories are stagnant. The result is that we have a balance of payments crisis, and we are back to the IMF. It's the structure of the economy that needs to be changed. Okay. So this is what I want you to keep at the back of your mind when you discuss or when you think about what Kaiser just said and what I'm about to say, which is that exports to Pakistan till the 90s was the highest in South Asia. But now we are the lowest in South Asia. Exports have stagnated. Our export performance our international competitiveness as measured in exports has deteriorated. This has to be fixed. This has to be the center of all strategies, whether they are geopolitical strategies or they are national security strategies or they are economic strategies. It's this fundamental fact, which is the result of the structure of the economy that has been created, that needs to be changed. Now, of course, we need to export to the entire world. But what I'm going to argue is that we have enormous opportunities locally. If we look at a geopolitical location, a geostrategic location, we can easily be the bazaar of this entire region because of our history and because of our location, and if we get the CPEC right and we get Gwadar going well. Here's why. Go back, old history. There is a reason why Upper Sindh, Multan, Lahore, and Peshawar were such vibrant cultural centers for centuries, long before colonialism. That's because they were at the center of trade routes. Trade routes that were connecting Eastern markets with Western markets. This is our history. Our language reflects that. Our food reflects that. Our clothes reflect that. This is what made us. Then came the British colonial times, and they cut off the northern routes because Afghanistan was to be the buffer state between Russia and British India. So they cut off the northern routes. They really had no interest in maintaining the routes with Iran. The routes, you need to spend money on them. You need to keep them up. There was no interest in the colonial times to maintain those routes. China was buried in its own troubles for a couple of 100 years. So our Multan, Peshawar, Lahore, they become much better connected with the Eastern markets. And so that's where we got the stimulus. That's where, growth happens when a lot of people get into contracts, when a lot of people find business opportunities, when they deal with each other. So our growth became east-centered rather than west and north. But that was okay. And then 1947 happened, and our bad blood with India started. So we cut off the eastern routes. So now, for the first time, we have an opportunity actually to have an integrated Indus Valley market for the first time. And I must say, people who made policies in the 50s and 60s did a terrific job. We have an excellent Indus Basin market. Goods move from Karachi to, am I getting out of time? Okay. Let me rush through. So we created a fantastic market, except that we were behaving like an island economy. Everything went to the port of Karachi and out. That's how we dealt with the world. And it didn't really matter because China was slumbering, Central Asia was under Soviet occupation, Iran was going nowhere, India was in what they used to call the Hindu growth rate of 3%. So it didn't matter. We could get advantage from this, and we got 6% annual growth rate for 3 or 4 decades. So this is great. It was good decisions taken. But the time has come to, given what our economic plight is, and given how important trade is, the time has come to re-establish the old roots. If we just re-establish connectivity with China through CPEC and Central Asia, another spur adding to CPEC, because Central Asia, since the Soviet Union, has huge resource-rich surpluses. They want to spend that money, they want to transform themselves. China is focused on Western China. Western China will be developed. And if Iran, the early signs are that Iran may well be changing. If Iran changes and sanctions are lifted from Iran, Iran will realize the potential that it has. Then we've got vibrant markets to connect to. But mark my words, all of them will want to connect with India. All of them will want to connect with India because India's deeper industrialization. We can either say, no, thank you, we won't let you deal with it, you develop your own ports, you deal with India. Or we can say, great, we will be the facilitators, come through us. What I'm going to give you a very quick concluding remark is that we are a population of 220 million people. We've got urban centers, growth centers up north in Peshawar. The reason why we are having problems in Quetta and Balochistan is because it never got integrated with the Indus market. So we've got Quetta, we've got Peshawar up there, we've got Lahore, and then we've got Karachi. All of these cities will become port cities if we become facilitators of trade between East and West and Northwest. They will all become port cities with all the dynamics of port cities. And since we are a country of 220 million people, if we invest in our people wisely, if we give them the skills, for transport cost reasons, these centers will become industrial centers. This is how it has happened all over the world. First you become a port city, you have trade facilitation, then you become manufacturing centers because you've got the labor force. So that's the promise. Now, what do we do about India in all this? Because, if they're going to take a revenge of what the Central Asians did to them for all those 800 years, what do? I believe it is in our national interest to look beyond Hindutva. I believe that there are enough sensible Indians who question what Modi is doing to their country. And I think we should find alliances with them. I think we should, in our national strategy, build this in, that we will facilitate trade because we will benefit from it. And I think it is inevitable that the pressure will come to India. But there are other things that Modi has nothing to do with. We had excellent fresh produce trade with India. Ours is a long, narrow country. Our seasons are short. Our population is growing. There's demand for fresh produce. Fresh produce would come from India, and that would temper prices of basic essentials. We banned that trade. That's not Modi. That's us. How does the common person of Pakistan benefit from banning trade in fresh produce? So these are things that we really need to think about as we think long term, so that we take the economic advantage of being a Chauraha as opposed to a T-junction. The dynamics are very different. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Dr. Nausheen Wasi, and she will give a lecture on Iran and Central Asian states. She's an assistant professor and director of programs on South Asian studies at the Department of International Relations at the University of Karachi, and has 24 years of research and teaching experience here. She has received many national and international research awards and has been member of advisory and editorial board of 4 research journals in Pakistan. Welcome, Dr. Wasi.
Thank you very much. May I have my presentation here, please? Well, it's been very exhaustive day, and we know we are running out of time. I'll try to be very brief. In fact, I have modified some of the things that I wanted to say, so you may find some overlapping or missing in the slides. But at the very outset, let me set the tone of my presentation. It's not premised to discuss the ongoing and upcoming projects and the potential to bring about peace and development in the country that is associated with the process of connectivity, and especially when it comes towards looking Iran and Central Asia. There is no denying the fact that in the given geopolitics around us and Pakistan's socio-economic and political indicators, opening towards Central Asia and mending relations with Iran is foremost important, and it looked possible. And we all know there is an exhaustive list of projects, MOUs, agreements between the two countries and between and among Central Asian countries and Pakistan. But it's not yielding fruit. And I would look this problem with the 2 questions with a very simplest approach. I'll try to use the lens of an ordinary citizen who try to make sense of the situation. Why have we not been able to establish viable economic relations with our neighbors? Though it seems possible and simple, we all have been hearing the solutions during the day. And how can we make the headway possible? Because that is the only way around. So please pardon me, bear with me if you find this too simplistic. You have been bearing with me for 2 days already. And like any ordinary person who depends at one time on history, on borrowing, I'll use Winston Churchill wisdom. He said that the further back you can look, the further forward you are likely to see. So what has been the history of Pakistan, Central Asian, Pakistan-Iran relations? I'll use some important datelines in history. I'll leave the significant part. This realization to establish relations with Central Asia and establish good relationship with Iran is as old as our inception and the independence of Central Asian states. Pakistan, Central Asian states gained significance in 1991 when these states became independent. Given centuries-old religious, cultural, and economic linkages along the famous Silk Route, there was great enthusiasm in Pakistan to forge relations with the Central Asian states, and Ijaz Sahab just talked about it. But while we trace the timeline of our ambitions to look towards Central Asia since 1991, we should not forget that these states were in our neighborhood since our inception in 1947. But at that time, these were part of Soviet Union, and we were allied to the US in the Cold War, and these states did not exist for us. Since 1991, we have had almost 250 till now. 250 plus bilateral MOUs, protocols, and agreements have been signed. And there are other multilateral agreements that we have signed at different multilateral forums under ECO, SCO, and other agreements like TAPI, IP, etc. Coming to Iran, relations with Iran again are as old as Pakistan's creation, and perhaps even before that, for sure before that, because in 1940, All India Muslim League passed a resolution in favor of Raza Shah when foreign forces were trying to occupy that. So no wonder when we became independent in 1947, Iran became the first state that recognized us. In 1950, we tried to consolidate our relations with Iran when we signed the Treaty of Friendship with Iran. And from 1947 till 1979, we were enjoying good relations as far as the strategic aspect of the relationship is concerned, though always there was the economic side of the issue as well. Till that period, Iran and Pakistan were allied with the United States. When the situation changed in Iran in 1979 with the revolution in Iran, and United States lost this strategic partnership with Iran, our enthusiasm towards Iran, though the realization was there, but we left focus to mend our relations with Iran. So that is the history. And then again, there are so many cooperation projects at multilateral forum. I'll be leaving some of them. But just to focus on RCD and ECO, because we were trying to have good relationship with Iran, and we wanted to expand that role from Iran towards the West Asia and Middle East, we established RCD in 1964. Along with Turkey and Iran. And Iran at different occasions mediated between Malaysia and Pakistan. Since late 60s, our cooperation towards that direction had been on cards. Then in 1985, when Cold War was relaxing, we restructured RCD as ECO. And in 1992, ECO was enlarged and it included Afghanistan and the 5 Central Asian states. And then a network of agreements, alliances, MOUs is there. There are a list of the issues that some of you might have heard, some of you might not, like ECO Highway, ECO Trade Agreements, ECO Trade and Development Bank, Pamir Highway, this or that, and so forth and so forth. But, and even at times with Iran, we agreed to partnership in developing a junction between Chabahar and Gwadar port that at the moment seems impossible. But what is the progress? And then there are so many other projects, I'll just be passing them, like Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline. Initially, India was included in it. America didn't want it to happen, so it came up with TAPI. And then India withdrew in 2009. Then we had this CASA that is under construction. There are so many projects that are under construction. And then there is one CAR Act that we do not talk about, but I would like you people to take note of it. This is the Central Asian Regional Economic Cooperation Program that was established in 1997 by the Asian Development Bank to encourage economic cooperation among the member countries of Central Asia and South Asia. 11 countries are part of it. Under this agreement, $41 billion investment has come to the 11 states of this agreement. There are 6 proposed corridors. Some of them are operational in part, but we do not talk about them because our focus has been on different issues. Then giving this rich history of agreements, MOUs, understanding, ambition, euphoria, whatever, when we see the progress, what we see, trade volume between Pakistan and Central Asian states has been very minimal. At times $200 million, $300 million, 270, 280. And the trade volume between Pakistan and Iran continues to fluctuate between $300 million to $1 billion. At times we just hit $1.5 billion. Our understanding is that by the year 2023, we want to enhance it to $5 billion. Some reports suggest that Smuggling of $6 billion trade is there. So the potential is there, but we are not exploiting that. What are the responsible factors? We all know this again: Afghanistan, long war and terrorism, then sanctions on Iran, Pakistan's foreign policy alignment with the United States mainly and Saudi Arabia, and ideological differences among Pakistan and Central Asian states. Those Central Asian states are the Muslim states, but they do not enjoy the Islamic euphoria that we enjoy in this part of the world. And it is very difficult for us to maintain relations with them on many accounts. What has changed then over the period of time, then we talk so much about connectivity? CPEC. CPEC, Dr. Kaiser talked about it, might be a game changer, might be a game over. But I see it mainly as a factor of stability that keeps Pakistan relevant, at least in the eyes of the world. And then Zamir Sahab talked very eloquently early in the morning about China factor, that there is some great strategic convergence between China and Pakistan, so we should not compromise our relationship with China on any account. CPEC has actually rekindled this connectivity factor. So another point that I would like you people to appreciate is that this connectivity that is largely attributed with this NSP document outcome is not that way. It has been there throughout the history. We were underplaying it, we are overplaying it. So in terms of economic, we have not gained anything. What has been the result of CPEC, on the other hand, is the revival of the new grade game, actually. That is going on many accounts, but I see, especially when I look at from the perspective of connectivity, competition schemes like International North-South Transport Corridor, Chabahar Port with Indian investment, I2U2, Quad, AUKUS, all have led severe competition in the region. So this connectivity, from whatever perspective we look at, is not helping Pakistan and is not creating dividends that we like it to happen. We talk about it that it is going to deliver this or that, but it's not delivering. So what we need to do, what is the way forward? We need to understand connectivity. As Ijaz Sahab said, that we need to mend our relations with India. Until and unless we mend our relations with India, this economic cooperation is not going to benefit Pakistan. Then connectivity is not about building roads, railway networks and infrastructure. Communication infrastructure is important, transportation is important, but driver is more important. Who is leading the seat? This vision, what do you want to achieve with this connectivity? How we are going to move ahead? This is very important. So connectivity includes mending the fences among the people of the region. So we need to have regional consensus and we have to have this ownership of the connectivity. It would not be on the desires of one power or the other power. In order to benefit from the regional connectivity framework, regional states will have to take the lead. So that is very important. Then domestic factor is very important. Again, Ijaz Sahab showed the slides of the GDP growth of Pakistan that was higher than India. Why it has been lower over the period of time? Population is, of course, one very important factor. But if you see the trajectory of the aid coming to Pakistan since the very beginning, one of the very important factor for our higher GDP during the early years was the generous aid coming from the United States. And this actually gave an ample space for the elite in our society to not to structure the economy, to have the indigenous growth. That has been one of the, again, very important factor. And as soon as this aid declined because of so many factors, we all know that our GDP growth rate declined. Then again, we need to find if Afghanistan's situation, we were talking about yesterday that nobody knows what is happening and nobody knows who is controlling Taliban. So we need to find a substitute for Afghan roots. And this has already been there. To cite just the one example, we signed quadrilateral transit in trade agreement that is there. So we'll have to find the ways. And if we connect towards India and then find places in Southeast Asia, I think we can do that. So that is very important that we need to do in order to gain the benefits of the connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for all the presenters who has done your presentation on time. So let's give big hand to all the presenters with the full mode. Okay, thank you very much. In fact, congratulations we must give to this PIIA who has organized this 75th anniversaries on the particularly Pakistan and the changing global order, which is a very pertinent issue for us. So we have been here for the conference since yesterday with the 8 sessions. In different sessions, we have looked at by the especially the diplomacy and excellencies and so on and so forth. This is a very last session, sir, which is very important as well for us. So this is with, what a relationship with the economic. So that this is being at the end, but this is most important issue for us. So in these situations, what do we like to say that these national and international issues are here to discuss on different issues is, at the end, we are here the Pakistan's economy and the connectivity. Of course, PIA plays wonderful role as a pioneer at the national and international level through the academic exercises. I'm proud to be co-chair as an academician here. Of course, when you talk about the connectivity, with related to the economic sector, we have to take care of the foreign trade, which was also discussed by our speakers regarding the export and import. We always expect the export has to be the greater than the import. Then we will have a surplus foreign trade. Similarly, the foreign aid also will not be possible as long as we have a very good agreement and policies with neighbor countries and some other countries. Of course, in the trade also, we can have a bilateral and multilateral trade as well. Including the FDI is a very pertinent issue. That's a foreign direct investment. And also, we have to think about that where we are going to invest for the especially the developing countries like us. And again, the foreign policy, which is the most important one. And the BOP, balance of payment, are the part of the economy of a country. Impact of BOP by the manufacturing sector, transportation, trade, and energy and other parts of the export and imports. Then the industrial corridors has to be clear for the connectivity for the country and the regional level. Cooperation and coordination always have to be together for the connectivity. So the connectivity refers to the corridor for the economic development. Connectivity is related with the mindset with the neighbor countries. This is an issue for the region-wise, not only for the Pakistan. This is being a very much important issue for all South Asian countries. So, our presenter, Dr. Kaiser, has already mentioned that related to the connectivity, he has focused on the central, eastern, and the western route. Why that paper is focusing in this route? It was related with the Balochistan and how it can connect with other places. That was all mentioned by Dr. Kaiser. Similarly, Dr. Ijaz Nabi has also mentioned regarding the economic activities of Chauraha with the Crossroads. I think that this is just like a destination. We economics believe that demand and supply must be there. After the production of that goods and services, we have to go for the market, which is known as the destination. But without cross the road, without the corridor, it wouldn't be possible. That's what this is being the most important issue for all of us. Similar, this Nausheen Wasi also to focus on this, looking towards Iran and Central Asian states. Definitely, this is also the different issue, but still the Pakistan and Iran has the one relationship to connect the way. But at the end, she was believing that peace and development is the most important thing for the economic development. That's what these all are the most important issue which we have seen in their papers. As well as what I've seen that Dr. Kaiser's focuses economic activities will take coolly if our political instability will remove it. So this is what we have a look at, this connectivity from the different angle. At the end, the aim of having this paper or this session is to grow our economic status. Similarly, the Dr. Injay also was, informed all regarding the economic status of the Pakistan, which has already 6% of the GDP. It was so nice, but afterwards it was declined. So this is a worried issue for all of us. What's wrong with this? Definitely, there is a problem with the political instability as well as the agreement with the neighbor countries. In that case, with the bilateral and the multilateral trade agreement must be very active for us. Without that agreement, it wouldn't be possible in the economic sector. So that's what I was keep on saying, that this session is quite different than others. It's more technical. That's what I like to focus. So he has given the example of this Nepal's case also. Yeah, Nepal is definitely the poor country. We are developing countries. When he has done the one survey, he has found that, he said that they have got the very good level of that income. What was the source? Of course, most of them have a remittance source. Source of economy is a remittance. That's what we used to say, that remittance economy. But I don't believe that remittance economy is the permanent one. It has to remove from all the way what I believe, and I used to say all the time as well. So this is how important trade we have to have it. Besides that, remittance economy, of course, we have to establish the manufacturing industries. Of course, we have to export the goods and services to the market, to go to that market. After, of course, this way has to be very clear to all of us. So in that sense, whatever they have presented here, it is really, really important for us. This is very serious issue to consider it by our PIA and to contribute it to the government as well. So in that sense, our Dr. Masuma Hassan, who has chaired this, who has managed this program, we must be proud with her as well. In this regard, now your turn is open. So I would like to open the floor so we can have questions, suggestions, and the comments. So you will get only the 15 minutes because of we are 10 minutes. Okay, she was saying I need 10 minutes, so you can have 2 or 3 questions within 10 minutes, very specifically by point only. Okay, if you have a questions, particular persons to answer, just tell us on that way as well. Thank you. So floor is open.
It's a comment and plus a question also from Ijaz Nabi Sahab. We always thought that opposition to trade with India, that is coming from the security establishment or maybe from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But then several years ago, when we decided to move ahead with not only most favored nation status with India, but also to improve trade with India, the main opposition came from 4 major stakeholders. One was the auto industry. They said that we will be losers. Second was the pharmaceutical industry. They said that they would be losers and they would be opposed to this opening of trade with India. Third, we were surprised it came from the agriculture sector. And fourth, to our utter surprise, came from the textile sector. Now, these are important sectors of any country's economy. And when you begin to face opposition from these important sources, then how do you sort of develop a consensus within the stakeholders who are likely to benefit more from this trade with India? Thank you.
Yes, it is on. Yeah, I think, as policymakers, you naturally have to be very concerned that important stakeholders voice opposition. But let's step back a little bit and let's see who are the principal stakeholders in any trade opening, whether it's vis-a-vis India or China or whoever, and whether it's Pakistan or any other country. There are basically three broad categories of stakeholders. Number one are the consumers. People who buy products because they want to live their lives and buy them at reasonable cost. To my mind, that has to be the stakeholder number one. The second important stakeholder are the producers. Government of Pakistan in 96, it was Benazir's government. I happened to be on leave. I was teaching at LUMS and I got sucked into the Islamabad orbit. Jahangir Ashraf Saab is not here. And the Prime Minister in a cabinet decision said, I have only one engagement with India, one mode of engagement with India, which is Kashmir, and it's not going anywhere. I want to open up another avenue, which has to be trade. Let's do a comprehensive study and see what the costs and benefits of opening up would be. They asked me to conduct this study. We put together a team, and we did exactly that. We said, what happens to consumers, what happens to producers, and what happens to the government? Remember, there's nothing stopping Indian goods from coming in from Dubai or Singapore. Enormous volume of goods come in from Dubai and Singapore, but it at much higher transport costs. So we end up still buying Indian goods, but at a much higher transport cost. Goods are smuggled, which raises all kinds of other issues. So we did a very comprehensive study. Consumers were by far better off across the region, across a range of products. Government was better off because things were now coming through ports and you could actually levy a tax on them. Among the producers, it was split. They want a protected market. Indian medicines are cheaper. But the greatest support I got within the pharmaceuticals industry was from one firm that actually exported medicine from Pakistan. His argument is as follows. He said, here's a machine that makes pills. And this machine is about the same in quality whether I buy it in India or in Germany. The German machine is 70% more expensive. More importantly, I need a technician to come and get this machine going before my workers take over. A German technician comes and wants to go away in 3 days. An Indian technician comes and doesn't want to go and costs a lot less. So exporting firms, even among the producers, were actually very keen to, would argue that there's a lot of benefit in opening up trade. There will be some producers who will be hurt. Look, agricultural productivity in Pakistan has decayed for decades. Our farmers need a bit of competition to improve technology. Our garments manufacturers wouldn't give a damn whether you open up trade with India or not. They're efficient. They can export all over the world. Our yarn manufacturer and grey cloth manufacturers, yes, because they are not so competitive. So I think we need to keep the larger picture in mind, larger group of stakeholders before we take decisions. But there are very good WTO rules for assessing damage to your industry. If Indian products come in a big way in a very short period of time and there is real damage to the industry, you can protect your industry. You can levy duties on them. But banning, not having trade, just opens it up through all kinds of smuggling and other informal channels. So the cost of that trade is very high.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add to that? May I? Ijaz? Add kar lo.
You have to ask me.
You know, I think the question boils down to the character of and the nature of the state. Who does the state represent? Does the state represent the larger national interest, or it represents specific lobbies and groups? Even today, talking of these industrialists and businessmen who oppose trade, I've had a lot of interaction with them. I belong to a community which is all traders. Privately, they would support trade with India. In public, they would go and oppose it. And they say, we can't support trade with India. Who was directing them? Something was going on. But that's besides the point. The point is, even today, I have actually been trying to figure out the Pakistan economy. There are 7 sectors which determine the entire gamut of national economic policy. Micro, macro. They benefit at the cost of the national economy. So if we are going to just listen to the stock market people and the real estate people and the sugar industry people to tell us what economic policy should be, they will of course improve their bank balances to no end, but the economy is draining because of them. So the character of the state is important. Who does the state represent? And whose voice is it going to act upon?
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? I think the one more question we can collect here. I think Anatol? Yeah, you. So this will be the last question. So if you have, okay.
So let's take a few more questions.
Yeah, Anatol, yes. She was.
Thank you. I must say, I was quite appalled by Dr. Bengali's statement that there is still no general feasibility study on CPEC. How can that be possible in a matter of such national importance? Secondly, I just wanted to ask, has anything actually been built yet of the corridor itself? I don't mean some of the projects around it. Has it actually started? Thank you.
Well, on route, except the western route, roads already existed. So they're trying to build upon it. But my contention all along has been that when the traffic starts, they will be carrying 24-wheeler trucks fully loaded. And those roads cannot take that weight. So we've really not built anything. And the western route, the roads don't exist.
The Chinese have done feasibility studies. We haven't. Planning Commission largely uses the Chinese studies. But for us to benefit from that, we need to see how we will link up, how our industrial structures will link up, how agriculture will link up. There's no study of that. Well, there are a couple of smaller studies which a research center has done, but it's not government studies.
Okay, okay, next, sir, yes. You can give a microphone to him.
Salam. My question is with Dr. Ijaz. Sir, we have seen Central Asian republics and Iran growing phenomenally, and most of the countries there are landlocked. Pakistan is not. Pakistan had a history of exporting human resource and its culture and products, textiles, hosiery, and things like that. Sir, what do you think while standing on this economic Chauraha, and from where you see the cancerous, ill and rotten policies of the NFC, National Finance Commission, and the priority of the governments, the successive governments, of spending in non-productive sectors, a huge budget going to defense when we are not going to have another war because there's a balance of terror now. So what do you think about, ill-treating Karachi, the only bread earner for the country? And what about, other things like the quota system? Are the developing regional countries do have quota systems? Are they progressing, like that, and we are not? So, sir, my question is the basic things.
These are many questions. Look, the basic thrust of what you're saying is right. We've got to set our priorities in terms of expenditures. We need to make our expenditures productive. A lot of subsidies are going to people who are powerful and can influence policy making. Whether it is the energy subsidy or it is the, residential consumers in Pakistan are subsidized more than industry is. It's the rest of South Asian countries are doing the same thing, but South Asia is pretty unique in the world to subsidize residential energy consumption at the expense of industry. But the structure of subsidies is such that the more energy you consume, more subsidy you get. And guess who uses the most energy? The rich people. So there's a whole gamut of issues in the way we do our expenditure priorities and how efficiently we carry out those expenditures. So if that's the central gist of your point, you're absolutely right. And people are aware of it. We just need to be much more conscious that we implement these things.
So what about quota and Karachi's situation?
Kaiser is much better position.
Quotas are implemented in many countries. In fact, in India, quotas are part of the constitution. What we've done with quotas is that within the quota for the underprivileged, there should have been competition. That is not there. So anyone who comes through the door is taken on. That is where it has failed. But quota has not really hamstrung our economic development. Karachi's development has not taken place, but go to any other city in Sindh, they are equally a mess. So it's not that Karachi is suffering and the other cities of Sindh are not suffering. In fact, they are in a worse shape in many ways. So, but the real problem, as I think Ijaz has been referring to, is how we are using our resources. If we continue to, every budget, non-development expenditure, which is called current expenditure, exceeds the budget. And development budget is always cut. We had, when you don't build infrastructure and you don't spend money on maintaining infrastructure, then your productivity falls. Our productivity in agriculture and industry has fallen dramatically. That is the real problem. And I'm going to be much more explicit here. And I think the culprit in all this is defense expenditure.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll stop here.
I'm so sorry that here is the time bound to me from the backside. So thank you very much once again to all of you. If you have any questions, suggestions, comments, we'll have a time during the refreshment as well. So I must say, apologize. Now this is a turn to wrap up by our chair, Dr. Rukhsana is here.
Thank you very much. I just need to give a statistics to sensitize our audience. 60% of our population, Pakistan's exploding population, is under the age of 30. According to demographers, and one esteemed demographer is sitting right to my right. So according to the demographers, this is a very, very dangerous situation, and we really need to do something about birth control literacy. I call it birth control literacy and disseminating information. Our record on population planning has been abysmal. So it's a horse and the cart syndrome going on. This whole thing about integrated Indus Valley market, I cannot tell you how excited I felt when this idea was suggested. I almost said, yay! But then I said, before we do that, perhaps we should address these things that Dr. Bengali and yourself, Dr. Ijaz Nabi, has mentioned, and Ms. Wasi. The other thing I would like to just make a moot point, a little point. When Dr. Ijaz Nabi said that he was quite enthralled with the convergence between economists and security and other experts that he heard, this rings a bell in my head about how vital interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary dialogue and research is, which is not really a priority in social sciences at least. And you know, when we all get together, regardless of which disciplines we come from, trust me, all forms of innovative ideas and new original thinking comes in, and you get so excited about hearing people bringing all this. And when you said that, you know, economists speak their own language, and this is very nice to hear different people, I think we live in a kind of academic solipsism, Anatole. You know, we all speak to ourselves in the tiny little heads, you know, bemoaning this and bemoaning that. This is so interesting what Dr. Bengali said. You address these things, make this a transit port, address pollution, address water issues. Then Doc Sab said about the integrated thing, this India thing. This is all very exciting. And then Jalil Saab said, you know, who are the people who resist these reforms? Very important things to discuss. I'd like to thank Dr. Masooma Hassan for this gigantic seminar. It's amazing. Thank you so much, madam, for inviting us all, and I am going to close. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Control kar lo.